Okay, so picture this, the absolute dead of night. Your neighborhood is completely silent. Suddenly, a shadow slips into a home. There's literally no sound of breaking glass, no forced entry to wake anyone up, just that quiet, stomach-dropping realization that someone else is inside. And the very first thing this intruder does, he slips a pillowcase over his victim's head. For 4 decades, this absolutely chilling signature haunted investigators. Today, we're unpacking the dark, decades-long mystery of a man who managed to evade capture and live a double life while terrorizing an entire city. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to break down one of the most shocking unsolved cases that, finally, met its match in modern science. The year is 1985. The location? The South area of Los Angeles. 2 a.m. In the middle of the night, the power in a woman's home would just suddenly go out, plunging everything into total darkness. The attacker would find his way inside, usually through an unlocked door or window, completely avoiding any noisy break-in. This wasn't a standard burglary, folks. It was something far more sinister. A perfectly executed, silent intrusion that kicked off an absolute nightmare. 50. Now, that's not just some random statistic. That number represents over 50 women whose lives were completely, irreversibly turned upside down by this one, unidentified man. Over 50 times, he just slipped into the night, committed horrific acts, and vanished without a single trace. Part 1. The Reign of Terror begins. A calculated predator. Let's walk through exactly how this guy operated, step by step, because he wasn't acting on some chaotic impulse. First, he'd scout the neighborhoods during the day, just blending in perfectly while learning the routines of the residents. Second, he meticulously targeted homes where women lived entirely alone. Third, once he was inside at night, he'd suddenly flip on the lights. And finally, step 4, his horrific signature. He would immediately cover the victim's head with a pillowcase straight from her own closet. This meant no one ever actually saw his face. Zero visual identification. Because of this terrifying routine, everyone quickly started calling him the pillowcase rapist. And here's the part that is truly staggering. 40! In just a single one-year span, between 1985 and 1986, he successfully pulled off over 40 attacks using this exact same methodical process. 40 attacks in 1 year, and the police were coming up absolutely empty-handed every single time. Part 2. The helplessness of the police. A case gone cold. You really have to imagine the massive gap between traditional police methods back then and the killer's cunning. On one hand, the cops were doing everything by the book for 1985. They were drawing up composite sketches, heavily increasing neighborhood patrols, basically trying to blanket the area. But on the flip side, the killer's tactics just completely neutralized all of that. Because he targeted lone women and used that pillowcase to block their vision, those police sketches virtually useless. He was literally just too smart for the standard 1980s investigative playbook. When you map out the timeline, the agonizing passage of time really hits you. 1985, the attacks start. By 1986, investigators actually do something huge. They collect a crucial DNA swab from a crime scene. But here's the tragic reality. In 1986, DNA testing as we know it simply wasn't a thing yet. He was leaving biological evidence, sure, but the science couldn't read it. Then 1990 rolls around, the investigation stalls out. By 1995, the files are shut, the case goes completely cold, and the public kind of just forgets. But the killer, he's out there walking free. Part 3, the DNA miracle, 40 years later. But, science doesn't stand still. It's 2021, and DNA technology has advanced exponentially. Realizing the sheer power of these new tools, the LAPD decides to crack open those dusty, forgotten cold case files. They pull out that one crucial piece of evidence that had literally been sitting in a box for decades. Get this, a 35-year-old swab meets a modern database. Just think about the sheer weight of that for a second. Investigators take that single swab from way back in 1986, a piece of evidence that was totally useless at the time, and they plug it into a modern, interconnected DNA database. And suddenly, after 35 years of absolute silence and dead ends, ding, they get a match. The system spits out a name, Warren Alexander. But it wasn't just his name that shocked the police. It was his profile. Warren Alexander was a 75-year-old man. The terrifying, calculated predator who stalked the shadows of LA was now practically an elderly grandfather. It was a completely jarring revelation for the detectives who'd spent years hunting a phantom, only to find him living this quiet life in his golden years. The duality of his life is what makes this so incredibly unsettling. For nearly 40 years, his day life appeared completely normal. I mean, he got married, he held down jobs, he blended seamlessly into society. But his nightlife? That reveals that underneath this mundane, boring exterior was a ruthless predator. He literally spent decades hiding his monstrous reality behind the facade of a totally average life. As police dug into this newly identified suspect, the final pieces of the puzzle just snapped into place. First off, they found out Alexander already had 2 previous rape convictions on his record. He was a known offender. But the absolute most chilling detail, when they finally raided his home to arrest him as a 75-year-old man, they found old pillowcases. The exact same tool he used to blind and terrify his victims 40 years ago was still sitting right there in his house. Part 4. 3 crucial takeaways. Lessons from a 40-year mystery. So what's the bottom line here? Beyond the shocking true crime details, there are some profound lessons. Number 1, justice might be delayed, but it eventually arrives. It took 40 long years, but time did not erase the evidence. Number 2, one tiny swab of evidence can solve massive crimes. A microscopic bit of biology from 1986 became the ultimate weapon in 2021. Criminals can run, but they cannot outrun science forever. And number 3, predators exist at every single age. Age does not equal innocence. It's human nature to look at a 75-year-old guy and think he's harmless. But as this case proves, guilt doesn't have an expiration date, and true monsters don't just age out of their past. And we're back to the number 50. In 2021, Warren Alexander finally faced a judge and was sentenced to 50 years in prison. It's a fitting number, for sure, but we can't forget what it really stands for. It stands for the 50 innocent women whose lives were violently disrupted by a man who actually thought he'd gotten away with it. Which brings us to a super vital practical reminder for everyone checking out this explainer. The story of the pillowcase rapist is a stark warning. Keep your doors locked, double-check those windows, and always, always prioritize your personal safety. We can have faith that justice will eventually prevail, but we still have to take everyday precautions to protect ourselves from the people hiding in the shadows.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to really chew on. Why do you think it took the police 40 long years to finally catch him? Was it strictly a limitation of 1980s technology, or was there something more to his ability to just blend right into normal, everyday society? Take a second to reflect on that. If you found this explainer as fascinating as I did, make sure to like, share, and definitely drop your theories in the comments below. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on how a predator hides in plain sight for 4 decades. Until next time, stay curious and